Hi everybody, my name is Jo and I love to read. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the 3 most disappointing and the 3 best books that I read in 2021. As I'm filming this and probably when it's going to get uploaded, sorry, my dog just moved the camera. As I'm filming this and probably when it's getting uploaded, it's almost getting to the point where I need to stop doing the end of year 2021 wrap up videos. I'm even kind of at the point now where I wish I was on track. I don't want to say on track, where I wish my life was, or not my life. Just basically, I wish that I had my January wrap up and done by now. I'm filming that today, but I got to get all my end of year stuff done as well. So life is busy. I am loving it, but it's just a whole different adventure. So let's get straight into this because that's what you're here for. You're not here for the life update. I'll do a little bit of that in a pregnancy update with my January wrap up, which will be coming soon, sometime in the next couple of months, sometime before the end, sometime before the end of February. The disappointing books, probably the most disappointing, and I say disappointing and I actually do mean that. I don't mean that these are the worst books that I read this year because I don't want to include them in this type of wrap up for the year because I feel like I've ranted about them enough as is in a wrap up video. But disappointing is always interesting, and I think it can be interesting and not always done in the wrap ups to actually hone in exactly why it was disappointing. The book might still have been good or it might have been horrible, but generally there's a specific reason why it has been disappointing. The first book that I'm going to talk about is The Magician's Apprentice by Trudi Canavan, which is book number 0.5, so like a prequel one in the Black Magician trilogy. So it wasn't a bad book. I didn't dislike it. I think I gave it about 3.5 stars. The disappointing part for me is that I've read the entire Black Magician trilogy. Absolutely loved the 3rd book, which I read this year, so I'll be talking about that later on because it was my favourite book of the year. But I was disappointed by this book because it just wasn't as good. I read this as a prequel after reading my favourite book of the year, expecting Trudi Canavan to absolutely blow me away. And she didn't. There were certain high parts and certain low parts. One of the high parts was like a society for women that were helping out them in a very oppressive culture, and so that was really fun, and we delved more into the magic system than we had in the original trilogy, including some healing magic, which healing stuff I find really interesting, but there was just slow parts in the book. It just was really slow and bigger than it needed to be, and that is a frustrating thing that I have finding with Trudi Canavan as an author. I can really enjoy her books, or I can feel like they're okay and a bit of a drag as well at some points, because the second book in the trilogy, the 3rd one is the one that I loved, the second book in the trilogy was slow in the middle, and if I had read that one this year, it also would have been on this disappointing list as well, because there was so much potential in that one. But I'm not talking about that one. Just this prequel. It was disappointing because of how much I loved the 3rd book, and it was alright, it was fine, I kept it, I read it, it was entertaining a lot of the time. But the potential for me to love it as visually as I did the 3rd book in the trilogy is disappointing that I didn't. The second book that I'm talking about is called Plotting and Writing Suspense Fiction by Patricia Highsmith. This one for me I think is all in the marketing and the name of the book. The name of the book. You would think when it's called Plotting and Writing Suspense, and suspense was a giant word on the title, that it would be specifically and a lot about suspense writing specifically. It's not. It's just a standard writing handbook with a little tiny chapter on suspense thrown into the end. That was really frustrating because if you're someone who's actually looking for a whole manual, and it's not like it was a thick book, but if you're someone who's looking for dedicated suspense writing, you're probably thinking that's what you're getting, but you're not. It's a repeat, or well, I say repeat, everybody has something different to offer, and because it was written by this particular suspense author, obviously the advice is going to be unique to hers. But there does come a point where you've read nearly every piece of writing advice if you read enough, and if you're looking for specifically suspense stuff, you would like it to be about suspense. They could have titled it Plotting and Writing Fiction by suspense author Patricia Highsmith, and then that wouldn't have made people think that it was so dedicated on suspense. So just a bit of a marketing and a error in the title, and as I say, I'll put the book cover up, but suspense is in big words, so that really disappointed me, and I ended up skipping most of the book and just reading the suspense thing, or I might have even DNF'd it, but I just think it was silly. Now, I've put this book on here, but I'm only going to talk about it a tiny little bit because I wanted 3 of each category. So to pick another disappointing book, again, I did have other crap reads for the year. I DNF'd a lot of books last year, but I really just wanted to talk about the books that threw out at me as about disappointing, and a lot of the books that I DNF'd, I wasn't surprised. I'm always going into a book hoping to be pleasantly surprised, but I'm not surprised if I don't enjoy it for a lot of the books that I was reading last year, finishing up TBR and that kind of thing. I was kind of going into them not expecting to love them. So it was hard for me to actually find a lot of actual disappointing books that I actually felt when I went back and looked were disappointing. So the final one that I'm going to talk about, mainly just to have it on this list, is The Evening and the Morning by Ken Follett. Sorry, that's the dog again. Which is, they call it Book 0 in the Kingsbridge series. It's the prequel. I still had a really fairly good time with this. A good time. Ken Follett is interesting, but I was just disappointed by how much I absolutely loved the second book in his series, and I was really hoping that this one was a return to how much I loved it. So the first book I loved, but I wasn't in love. The second book, absolute favourite, made me cry. It was amazing. I love it so much. The third book was a big disappointment, which I didn't read last year, hence why it's not on this list. But the third book was disappointing. So I don't know why I'm necessarily disappointed by this one. I should have been expecting it, but I was really hoping that he just had one kind of off book in number 3, and that this book was going to be very good, and it just wasn't. Now on to the best books of 2021. Silver Shadows by Richelle Mead, which is the 5th book in the Bloodlines series. There's going to be slight spoilers for this. I'm not going to talk about it in like namey names to say what they are, but it is the 5th book in the series. I'm just going to use broad terms, but it would probably be a little bit of a spoiler for those who are reading the Bloodline series, so proceed with caution. The first half of this book was a gut-wrenching story about forced institutionalization, and the second half was a heart-pounding, amazing romantic story of escaping these bad people with the love of your life. This is just such a good book. Like, it's not a hard-hitting one. It's not something to make you think, aside from obviously the forced institutionalization plotline, that makes you think, but it's not something that you would stop and think very like scholarly about or anything like that. It is a fun series. It is a series about vampires after all. But it was just so much fun and so fast paced, and I really cared about the characters at this point, and it was just a really fantastic installment. I would go back and just read that one by itself. It was so good. It was such a wild ride. I had a fantastic time in it. I always really want to read a story about how main characters are escaping a bad situation and they actually get away and start a new life for themselves, and this has a bit of that in it. Not all of it, but a bit of that in it. And I just had a great time. It was fantastic. My second favourite book of the year was The Goodluck Girls by Charlotte Nicole Davis, which is the first one in the Goodluck Girls series. I'm reading the second book soon. It's coming in the mail. I'm really excited. My mood is holding. I ordered this one even though I have a TBR because I was in the mood, and it is holding, which is really good because it's taking a while to get here, but I'm really keen to see what happens with the rest of these characters. So this story, The Goodluck Girls, is crazy. It's a story about being born into a hard world and taking this mad opportunity to try and make things better for yourself. It features 5 amazing women who go on one hell of an adventure, and I really, really can't wait to see how their story continues in the next book. I was reading that bit off my laptop because I find it really difficult to explain this book, but it is really good. It is a really, really, really good book. It's absolutely fantastic. So it has things like women's rights and like how injustice class systems can be and how unfair and corrupt a society can be and how unfair it can be being born into a situation and then being born into a world that makes it nearly impossible to get out of it. It's just crazy and heart-pounding, and I had such a really good time with it. I can't wait to read the next one. The story is about 5 women who either were born into or were sold into slavery in a welcome house, and when they're younger they are daytime girls who do the cleans and the cooking and the maid and things like that, and when they become older they turn into nighttime girls, which they're sold into sex slavery. It's a really hard book. It is a young adult story, but I think the way that they do it doesn't focus so much on, even though like that's the world that they're born into, it doesn't really focus heavily in a graphic way on the sex slavery element, and it's definitely something that leaves you hopeful for a better outcome for the girls. So I'll say that without giving away anything else. But it was really fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to read the next one. You all should go read it. I don't know if Silver Shadows and the Goodluck Girls are kind of tied. I think I enjoy Silver Shadows slightly more, but I love that the Goodluck Girls made you think a lot more about issues that we're still facing these days. My absolute favourite book of the year is The High Lord, which is number 3 in the Black Magician trilogy by Trudi Canavan. Now, as I was saying earlier, it can be a bit hit or miss with Trudi. I am intending, unless I'm really going through and getting bored of the next book that I read, but I'm intending to read a lot of her books within this particular world, because it is like a high fantasy one that has different series within the world. I'm not sure how many, but I know that there's definitely another one. And I will test out to see whether Trudi Canavan isn't like a favourite author for me, or whether she's a bit kind of hit or miss. But she hit me with this one. Oh my god. I loved it so much. I can't really go into details, and that absolutely pains me because it's the 3rd book. So it's the final book in the trilogy. It's such spoilers, but let me just say that I was reading it so quickly. I wish I was on holidays so I could have just read it when I was reading it earlier this year, and it made me bawl like a baby at the end, and I'm so glad to have read it. And I was in a book coma, and it was just a wild ride, and I loved it so much. So the start of the series, so I can give you the blurb for the first book in the series if you would like to know what this book is about. But it is about a girl called Sania who has been born into the slums of the city. She's born into the poor class that live in the place called the slums. But through this event that happens, she is found to have magical powers, and her magic is so strong that she actually has to go and train at an academy, which is normally only reserved for rich people, but because of how much natural talent she has, they have to take her into the academy, and things go from there. I will say that the second book, if you didn't sort of remember from, the first book was really good, the second book was a bit slow in the middle, but still had like some really good moments, and the third book was just amazing, worth like every second that I spent reading the series. So that is it for my 3 most disappointing and 3 best reads of last year. Thank you so much everybody for continuing to watch my videos. I hope you enjoyed this one. What were your favourite reads? What was your most disappointing read? Let me know in the comments below, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!